Hi, this is Carl with SMB Community Podcast and Small Biz Thoughts, and I'm joined today by Rayanne Buchianico. Welcome, as always.
Thank you very much for having me today.
So Rayanne is one of these people that if you're not connected to her, you should be. She does an amazing variety of things, and so we're going to talk about some of those things today. I guess the primary one is that she's teaching some classes for us. So when we have probably your most popular class coming up, so that should be pretty cool. So before we get started, I wanted to talk about some of the blog posts that I think are interesting this week, and two that really stand out to me. One, as always, is Robert Crane from CIA Ops, and he has a blog post this week about Azure Site Recovery, and so he walks through some of what that is and how you use it. And so anyway, that's linked from my blog at smallbizthoughts.com. And of course, you can go to ciaops.com and just look for the blog. And Robert's a great member of the community from Australia, and we will have him on the SMB Community Podcast again. Again, he's one of those people that it's just fun to talk to, and you should know him if you don't already. The other one is Andy Parks from the UK has got a really great article on using the command prompt and Clipboard. And I think a lot of us have, remember the days when Clipboard and command prompt didn't work very well together, and that's certainly no longer the case in modern Windows. So anyway, those are my two tips for the week. So Rayanne, what have you got for us?
Well, as far as Robert Crane goes, he and I had a podcast together, which you can find on his blog site. We talked about Sell My MSP and how to value the small business, the small MSP, whether it's fully managed services or a hybrid or even break fix has some value. So we talk about a lot of those things and how to go about, acquiring businesses if you're looking to grow through acquisition, or even if you're getting ready to move on to bigger and better things and want to sell your MSP.
Right. So let me talk about that for a minute, because we had Amy Babinchak on recently and talked about Sell My MSP. And since then, I've had a chat with a couple of different people who are, wanting to think about retiring in the next few years, but they don't even know where to start to figure out, is their business worth selling? Is there any money in it? How do you get out of this after 20 years of putting your life into your business, and then you think, well, I just have these crappy clients and whatever. So anyway, any thoughts on someone like that? Should they bother looking into it if they're not sure?
Absolutely. I think that every business out there has some value. It may not be as much as you were hoping to get out of retirement, but rather than just hand your business and your clients, crappy or otherwise, to the guy down the street, see if maybe they would be interested in purchasing those clients. It worked.
So, okay. Well, all right. So we're going to put a link to that on the site here. And so anybody who's interested, go to sellmymsp.com, and you've got a form there where people can get an estimate of what it's worth.
Yes, we do. We've got a little link there. You put in your figures, and we have some formulas built in, and it will just give you some, an idea of what your business may be worth. And then if you're thinking about looking to get out of your business in the next 3 to 5 years, start now. Start putting your ducks in order. Start getting your processes documented, and turn your I own a job to I own a business, so that you can find somebody to sell it to pretty easily.
Right. So you have no crystal ball, I assume, but right now you think the market is hot for selling your business. There's more buyers than sellers. What do you think it's going to be like in 2 years?
I don't see that that's going to change an awful lot in the next couple of years. We have far more buyers than we have sellers right now. When I put a new business on the market, I immediately, within 24 hours, have 2 to 3 people that are interested in looking at the financials.
Wow. And anyway, so that's enough of that, I guess. But okay. You have a background specifically relevant to this, and that's, I guess, That's why you're here, and it's why you're teaching one of our classes. Tell us about your background other than running an IT business.
I started in public accounting back in the late 1980s. And what we did, I was working for a CPA firm, and we resold a program called Mass 90, and we started to convert people from the paper checkbooks into computerized accounting systems. That's how I kind of got my start in both computers and in IT and in accounting. And so growing through those years over the last 30 years, gosh, has it really been that long?
Started when you were 8, so that's cool.
Over the last 30 years, what I have done, and so I got my first MCP back in 1998, started my own company, Bike Information Technologies Incorporated, out of Philadelphia until I moved to Florida in 2001. And so I really have focused my business in working with the MSP and cleaning up their accounting systems and helping them understand their books and their financials and what is this information telling them, and how can they take the information that they have and use that to get proper pricing for their customers. How much is it time for me to hire? How much do I charge for this service? How long can I afford this new employee until I start to go broke again? So we go through all of those things in the financial processes that make all of the difference in our 5-week course coming up.
Very cool. So so over at greatlittleseminar.com, Rayanne teaches a couple of courses. That's one. The other one is on QuickBooks. And so what makes this course different? Like, what's the guts of this course?
I really like this course because it starts, I'm going to back up for just a minute. I was at the Channel Pro SMB forum last week. Great speakers, and what I hear when I see a lot of the other financial experts out there talking is I hear an awful lot of high-end, this is what you need to do, and this is how, these are the numbers that you need. What I don't hear is an awful lot of specifics of how can we make sure that the numbers that you're using to measure all of these processes are accurate, and what steps can you take. What individual, specific actionable steps can you take to make sure that your accounts are accurate so that, the old saying, what you can measure, you can manage. Well, before you can manage it, you need to be able to measure it. Before you can measure it, you have to know if the numbers are right. So you can take all of the information, download it from the bank, throw it into your QuickBooks, and kind of go like this. Okay, so the numbers are telling me this, but are they in the right places? I help you understand where they need to be and how to get them there. So we go through the chart of accounts, we go through the P&L and the balance sheet. What is this information telling us? We do cash flow forecasting and cash flow trends. We also do profitability, not just at the company level, but also at the contract and customer level, or even the process. So you have your managed services income, then there's also managed services costs that go along with it. What's your gross profit for just the managed services piece? Right. What's the gross profit for just the products that you sell? Because, your overall gross profit might be 55%, but it's only 10% or 12% for the products. It's a lot higher for the managed services. What can you do with that information? That's some of the things that we talk about. Right.
And are most people in our business really willing and able to put in the time it takes to put those numbers in there?
Absolutely. I find that, sure, there's a lot of guys, a lot of one-man shops out there, or one-person shops out there that are just so busy and they can't be bothered with it. But at some point, every business owner says, what am I doing? And how am I going to get there? I want certain things out of my business and I don't really understand what I need to do in order to get there. That's what these classes are going to teach.
Right. So do you have goals? Like, do you say, your EBITDA should be within this percentage, and you should have so much profit per employee, per FTE, or do you have any kind of targets like that?
I do. In the first week of the class, I hand out a benchmark handout, which is where all of the different, gross profits and EBITDAs and all of those percentage. So that you can know when you're looking at your P&L whether or not you're landing in certain benchmarks.
And so you're making changes to the class. So I think you've done this a couple of years now. What's new? Like, is there new money or something?
Well, what I did was I was looking over the course, and there's so much information. Every time I think this is our 4th round for this class. So that would be 4 years?
Yep. It's hard to believe.
So what I've done is, okay, there's a lot of really good information, but what sort of information is really relevant to all of the MSPs out there? So I'm just going to move some information around, and I don't think that I'm taking anything out, but I'm putting some more stuff in, and focusing more on like I said, the profitability at the service level, as well as the overall profitability of the company and the gross profits, and the things that we can do with those numbers. How can we set sales goals? How can we, set, salaries for our technicians, and that sort of thing.
Right. So it's interesting because you always get so many questions. I think sometimes that we should just start the first class by you just answering questions for an hour. So I think a lot of people don't have anybody that they can talk to about the money side of their business that's knowledgeable about service delivery, right? And so when they finally get you, they want to keep you for an hour after class asking questions.
And sometimes that happens, and it's okay. And you're right. I think, especially the smaller MSPs, they have their tax preparer, and so they see their tax preparer once a year, and they drop off their QuickBooks and they go running, and here's your tax return, send this much in, or whatever. But you really, so many of them out there don't have an accountant or a tax preparer that they can talk to that understands tax, understands accounting, and understands the IT business all in one place. And that's what I try to bring to them.
Well, you're pretty unique in that regard. I mean, I love my enrolled agent, my tax guy, but he doesn't know IT, by any stretch of the imagination. And I think for a lot of us, the smaller businesses, our tax person is really our primary business advisor because they know so many things, right? They know about employment stuff, and they know about what kind of profit it should look like, and that
we call that compliance work. They know all about the compliance work,
right? Which has got nothing to do with how you price your packages so that you can actually make money. So.
And I'm an enrolled agent as well. So in all 50 states in the union, I can represent taxpayers throughout, the IRS process. I can prepare taxes, and even the collection process, which is not fun for anybody, including me. I'm not a fan of the IRS. I just, I'm just the intermediary, and I'm always on the taxpayer side.
So you're not the tax man.
No.
Tax woman. So, and in the class, when you've taught it in the past, one of the things that really stood out to me is people are so eager to engage you, right? I mean, they literally are like, oh my God, I love this. I see the comments where they're like, this is the greatest thing ever. Thank you so much. So when you start to make changes, how much of the questions have been sort of evolved back into the class so that I guess you reduce questions in the future because you've already answered them in the teaching?
Well, my purpose is not so much to reduce the questions because I love them. I love interacting with the people and helping them through that light bulb moment so that they, oh my gosh, I get it now. But I'm making these changes so that I can answer not only the questions that haven't been asked, but the ones that I want to be able to offer this information because somebody else may not even think to ask that question, but it would still apply to them.
Right.
So I want to make sure that I tailor the information so that it really gets to a wide audience.
Right. So what's the difference between this class and the QuickBooks class?
The QuickBooks class is all about QuickBooks. Step by step, how do we do things in QuickBooks? And in the QuickBooks class, which is also a lot of fun, I really like that. I have QuickBooks Desktop on the left and QuickBooks Online on the right. And so I split the screen and we talk about the different transactions that need to get entered and how to handle certain things. Then I show you how to do it inside QuickBooks. This particular class is not software oriented. So you will not receive things like debits and credits and step-by-step QuickBooks instruction. However, all of the reports that I run and a lot of the information you will see inside the class is going to be QuickBooks. You will recognize the appearance of the reports because they all come from QuickBooks. So I do end up taking an awful lot of QuickBooks questions during the class. But if somebody's using Xero or Peachtree or some other accounting system other than QuickBooks, this class is for them as well.
Right. So I'm redoing a little rewrite of managed services in a month for next year. And one of the things I talk about is the financial stuff. And I sort of casually say QuickBooks because that's what I use. But I know that some people use Peachtree and some people use BusinessWorks and whatever. Just looking at the students that you've worked with, would you say that 90% of them use QuickBooks? And what else do they use realistically?
I see probably a large portion. I'm going to go with about 85 to 90% of them are on QuickBooks. Some of them desktop, some of them enterprise, some of them online. The others that I run into in the wild more often than not is Xero, which is really gaining a lot of traction in the world.
And it's just Xero, Z-E-R-O?
X-E-R-O.
X-E-R-O, okay.
And that's an online accounting system. Some people use Freshbooks, which is not really an accounting system. All that really is it's an invoicing system and a place to put things. It's terrible. Don't use it. Sorry, Freshbooks.
I was going to say, there's one advertiser down the toilet.
Peachtree, because of my work with Autotask integrations, I do a lot of Peachtree, Great Plains, and Mass 90 work, so I see that a lot too. Mass 90 and Great Plains are really for the larger companies out there.
Right.
But there are plenty of small companies out there still using Peachtree.
And how many of those are now owned by Sage?
All of them. Well, Great Plains is owned by Microsoft, but Mass 90, Peachtree, BusinessWorks, is that Sage or is that?
Yeah, that's Sage now.
That's Sage too. Yes, Sage just sucked them all up.
It's funny. I'm going to different links and I put in Peachtree and boop, up comes Sage. I'm like, oh, okay. I put in Mass 90, up comes Sage. I'm like, okay. So I guess Intuit doesn't quite have a monopoly, but. All right, so important safety tip on FreshBooks is not QuickBooks. So.
It is not. No, the reporting is practically non-existent. When I run into a FreshBooks client, I have to export all of the transactions in a CSV and then sort it all in Excel and then try to make some sense of it. And it's not my favorite. Okay.
So slightly different subject, but speaking of importing and exporting, are you a believer or a non-believer in connecting my PSA to my QuickBooks?
Absolutely believer.
Believer.
Yes, I'm an absolute believer in getting your invoices from your PSA into your accounting system. The fewer duplicated entries you need to make or duplicated work, the better off everybody is. Humans make errors.
Right, and so you mentioned earlier getting the bank stuff down into QuickBooks. Now you get their PSA into QuickBooks. Is it really that simple?
It's pretty simple. If the only caution I might throw out there is if you're downloading your bank transactions into QuickBooks, QuickBooks has this funny habit of remembering where you put it the last time you downloaded it. So it's real easy to, download it and let QuickBooks do all of your coding for you, except that it usually ends up being wrong, like very wrong.
Right.
So you're just causing more work for yourself or somebody else.
Because somebody else?
Yeah, like this hill that just walks past.
So yeah, because I noticed I've decided to buy Amazon stock only because I write them a check so frequently, or they're in my QuickBooks so frequently. But when I download the stuff and it puts it all in Amazon, it wants to say that it's either a personal withdrawal for entertainment, or that it's all office supplies. But I buy all kinds of stuff from Amazon. Sometimes it's training, and sometimes it's office equipment, and all this other stuff. So the payee Amazon really doesn't tell me very much.
Right, exactly.
So
I have the same problem because my QuickBooks wants to send it to books and publications. Well, the only books I'm really buying off of Amazon are going to land on my Kindle, and that comes in as a different item anyway. So I'll know, okay, all right, so that was a Kindle. But if I'm buying office supplies, or if I'm, buying, air conditioning filters, everybody say hello to Roxy.
Roxy, hey Roxy, what's up?
It's always take your dog to work day over here.
Exactly. It's always take your cat to work day at my house. So.
Yes, so with your Amazon, you definitely want to make sure that you go through each one of the transactions as they come down. Don't let QuickBooks take control over your accounting system. Make sure that you know exactly what's being posted, where it's being posted, and why it's going there.
Right. So now the other thing is that people look at tools and they think, okay, so how do I deal with my RMM versus my PSA, which is a cost of goods sold and which is an operating expense, right? Is that correct? One of those is one and one is the other?
Yes, one of those is one and one. So your RMM tool, that is something that you are using in order to make sales, right? So you sell your remote monitoring and maintenance as a service to your customer. As a result of that sale, you are paying your RMM tool, right? So as the more RMMs you sell, that your revenue goes up, but so does your cost. Your PSA isn't going to change from one month to the next, whether you have 5 customers or 500 customers. So that is not really a cost of goods sold. That is a cost of doing business. And so that is going to be down there in the expense section.
Right.
That's the way I see it.
Yeah. Some things like hardware is pretty easy. I sell a computer, I mark it up, I buy a computer, I mark it up, I sell it. So the difference is my profit. It's real easy to see what my cost of goods is for hardware. It's a little less easy when you've got all of these services. You've got antivirus and spam filtering and all this other stuff. But anyway, so is it pretty straightforward to set that up, do you think? Because I did it a long time ago.
It is pretty straightforward to set that up. Other things that you might want to make sure that you consider is for like the 1- and 2-man shops. So you might have a technician that's 100% billable. That's pretty obvious. It's a cost of goods sold. Well, what about the owner who is 50% billable, and 30% sales and 20% admin or something like that. So you might need to split those up so that you can get a true gross profit number.
Right.
Because you want to make sure that you're paying attention to that as well.
Right. And you have some exercises you put students through, and they can actually send you their homework.
Correct.
So give us an example of the kind of exercise that people could expect in this class.
Okay. So
I don't want to scare them off,
No. So the first week what we do is we're analyzing the business. So go through your chart of accounts. I even already have sample chart of accounts that I'm going to hand out. And so you can look at my sample. You can look at yours. We talk about, and then one of the assignments is to redesign your chart of accounts so that it works in your business. My sample is just that. It's just a sample. It's not fit for every business, not yours. And, it might be good for yours, but not so much over here. So what you want to do is think about your business and what information do you need out of it. So what I teach in this class is to learn how to read the financials. I teach them how to, think about their business in ways that they've never thought before, and then I teach them how to act on those new thoughts.
Right.
So other assignments is in week 3 is the cash flow forecasting. So we have a cash flow forecast form and a worksheet. So what I ask them to do is to take their cash and forecast it out 4 weeks. How much money are they going to need in 4 weeks to make sure that all of the bills are paid, payroll's covered, payroll taxes are covered, all of those things. Think about how much money's coming in. How do we know how much money's coming in? And how do we know how much money's going out? And then, schedule it.
Right. Do you think that people are too optimistic about how much money is coming in? I mean, I know when I first started, I was always like, oh, I'm going to get this. And then, payroll comes. I'm like, where's my money?
That happens to everybody, I think. So right, you send out your invoices, right? You mail out your invoices and you say, okay, I'm just going to hope that it gets here before next Friday because that's when payroll is. So yes, what we also talk about is how to make sure that you're not overly optimistic. We need to be realistic about the customers that pay on time and the customers that like to push the envelope a little bit, and you've got 30-day terms, maybe they'll send you a check before 60 days is up.
Right.
Or you've got due upon receipt and they think that means 30 days,
right.
So.
Well, I have a tiny little cash flow Excel spreadsheet that I use. And I always want to know like how much I have between now and the next payroll and the payroll after that, right? So I have one category is money I'm sure it is coming in. And then I have money I hope is coming in. So I have to kind of discount because if the hope category is too big, then I'm like, oh, well, I got to figure out what I'm going to do here.
Or start making some calls.
Yeah. Although I'm not big on accounts receivable, so I love getting paid in advance for things. So that's made my life a lot easier. I'll tell you that.
Same here.
Okay, so we're almost out of time, but I wanted to also give you an opportunity to talk about anything else that you've got going on. So it sounds like you actually do some consulting with people if they really need it.
I do. Some one-on-one consulting with companies that are looking to understand their financials or clean up their QuickBooks or even their AutoTask and have their AutoTask and their QuickBooks communicate a little bit better. So I do an awful lot of those, one-on-one calls with them. And what I typically do is, we get onto a WebEx, we put together a planning session. What are we going to do? How quickly can we accomplish these things? Then we put together a plan and a budget, and and then we put it on the schedule and make it happen. So I do quite a bit of those. Also, I find some tax preparers may neglect the smaller MSPs. So if they need some tax help or accounting help or just ongoing, an ongoing accountant or advocate in their corner, then, I'll take them on as monthly or quarterly or even annual accounts.
Very nice. And you just take 10% of the profit off the top? Is that the deal?
I'm not allowed to do that.
Oh,
that's... Both agents have ethics that we have to adhere to. And
wow.
Yeah, and we're not allowed to charge percentages. Darn it.
Oh, that's interesting. You would think that would be one sure way to do a good job is to make sure that I'm profitable.
Well, I want to make sure that you're profitable anyway, because when you are successful and you're hanging around with me, then I guess what, I become successful.
That's true. I got to say, I've given Hank, my tax man, a number of very large payments over the years, and happy to do so. So.
Well, right. When you find somebody that you like, stick with them. If they're doing a good job for you, there's no reason to change. I never try to talk anybody into switching their accountants, especially if they're happy where they are.
Right. Plus he buys me lunch once a quarter, so you know.
Oh, can't beat that.
I'm cheap. I'm easy.
But it probably lands on your invoice at the end of the
Well, it's cost of goods sold. All right. So the class is over at greatlittleseminar.com. Starts, I think, October 6th.
11th, I think.
It's October 11th. That's what I was going to say. And so anyway, folks should sign up now, check it all out. And if they have any questions, we'll put your contact information here and they can bug you about that. But it really is, quite sincerely, one of those most popular classes we do every year. And it's overwhelming how much people love this class. So I appreciate you doing it for us.
Well, fantastic. I really enjoy doing it too. So I get to meet a lot of really great people all around the country, sometimes all around the world. I've had a few foreign people in the class too, and they've even gotten a lot out.
So that's interesting. So I guess some pieces of it are going to be the same everywhere. Cost of goods sold is cost of goods sold, and the pounds or some other currency is kind of irrelevant when you're talking about hiring somebody. It's still how much money do you have and what are you going to make and what are you going to be able to sell once they're on board, and that calculation is essentially the same without regard to the tax law.
Accounting is accounting all around the world, no matter how you count the money.
All righty. Well, thank you very much. I look forward to the class and I appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you, Carl. Great to talk to you as always.